Starting in September 2021, the Jehovah's Witness organization, the Watchtower, started a direct purge of elders that were not supporting the world's narratives relating to the procedure and the growing secular, I'm going to have to use words, be careful here. There were growing secular dates with the prefix man and rhymes with lube. They pulled a video I had done on the governing body dates of a man, and they gave me, my channel, a baseball term where you have 3 of them and then you're out. So I have to be careful here. So at this point, I will just mention I have another channel on a video service that rhymes with mumble and starts with an R. I know this is silly having to go through all this. And the channel name, all capital letters, is N-I-N-I-R-O-N. So anyways, this video is going to document the steps of this elder purge that is ongoing, began in September 2021. It's ongoing. There's been continual steps taken with this. And then I'm also going to touch on the larger context just a little bit, that this is within a secular world context of really a secular world purge that really is spiritual in nature. And so I'm also going to touch on the larger spiritual, biblical context of what is going on. And so I hope this will be encouraging and enlightening to those that watch it. So let's get right into it. We'll start with the documents relating to the purge. Okay, now here is the official document, September 27th, of this announcement for elders in 2021. And the setting of this is this was at the height of the year where they were rolling out the thing to everybody and making everybody get it. And the President of the United States had given a big speech about it and how federal employees would have to have the thing or lose their jobs. And it was all in this atmosphere that this began. And because of these government, I just still can't say that word, but the dates that begin with a man. So there were elders that were scripturally speaking up about this because it violated Christian consciences. And the organization was taking a course in actually advocating this procedure, these things, and even mandate. I can't say that. I hope that doesn't get snagged. But anyways, Bethel was also requiring this for their special full-time servants. But I have another video on that you can see with that. But so this is to keep the focus on the elders. So here, this is really big. This is a real clampdown. So for elders, it mentions these C-19 procedures, respect for the superior authorities. Out of concern and love, we are sharing the following important information. As a result of the ongoing pandemic, secular authorities in an increasing number of lands are, there's that word again, or strongly encouraging that their citizens be getting the procedure. The recent governing body updates have helped Jehovah's people understand the thinking of the faithful slave on this matter. And I won't get off on that, but that's just outrageous because it's not the thinking of the Bible, of our Heavenly Father, Bible principles on freedom of conscience and not violating your God-given conscience, but we're telling you what these 8 men, think. Anyways, I won't get off on a rant there. So branch offices, number 2, have reported that some elders have voiced strong personal opinions against the C thing. Why is this of concern? Romans 13:1 says that the existing authorities stand placed in their relative positions by God. Also, the study note on Romans 13:5 says, this is in their study Bible, a Christian submits to human governments when a command does not contradict God's laws. Romans 13:2 states, whoever opposes the secular authority has taken a stand against the arrangement of God. Thus, elders should be careful not to voice personal opinions that contradict direction from the superior authority. See, if your conscience is being violated, you can't say anything, and they call that a personal opinion. If an elder has been doing so, now is the time to stop. This is very strong language where they usually don't say anything this strong. Otherwise, he could become guilty of causing divisions in the congregation. And reading between the lines on that, causing divisions is actually something that would get one, if they push the issue, would actually get one removed not only as an elder, but they can actually disfellowship you and put you out of the organization for this causing of divisions, undermining the unity of the organization. But I have to comment on the one thing here that this is very disingenuous, because the study note, of course, is true. A Christian would submit to the governments when the command does not contradict God's laws. For example, stopping at a red light, or many other things that are reasonable and are government laws that a Christian would follow. But see, they obfuscate things here, because now we're talking about informed consent and one's Bible trained conscience, that all Christians don't have the same outlook there. And so they want to just obfuscate it and use this as that we must submit. If the government tells us to get this thing, then we've got to do it as a Christian, which is that's what's so outrageous. And that's why these elders were speaking up, because they were the ones with a conscience. And I'm going to get into that later with this whole purge thing, that this is, as bad as it is, it's actually something good that God is going to is using to bring out those who are his own and recognize them. So number 3, at Romans 16:17, elders are admonished. Keep your eye on those who create divisions and causes for stumbling contrary to the teaching that you have learned, and avoid them. Of course, the teaching would have been in the Bible, but they're obfuscating again. This teaching now is direction that they got from governing body updates, which were unscriptural updates to begin with. And so now they're using the scriptures as this hammer. Keep your eye on those that are not following the teaching that they got in these governing body updates, which wasn't Bible-based teaching. It was government requirements to get the thing. Thus, elders have a scriptural responsibility to counsel any, including fellow elders, who cause divisions in the congregation. Circuit overseers will closely monitor the situation. We commend you, brothers, for holding firmly to God's word. See, look, oh my goodness. Promoting unity in the congregation and taking the lead in showing honor to the secular authorities. We thank you for your cooperation in this matter, and we take the opportunity to send our warm Christian love. And then after saying that, for the coordinator of the body of elders, it says this direction here, announcement for elders. Please arrange for the body of elders to meet this week, in that September, and to discuss this announcement for elders along with the cited scripture. So now the body of elders is being told to get together and discuss this. And as you noted there, the circuit overseers will closely monitor, so they're looking over the shoulder to make sure that you purge out any brothers that won't really compromise their own Christian conscience. And so this is really the beginning of a big purge, and it's really going to separate out those that have a strong conscience toward God. And who's it going to leave? It's going to leave yes men that are willing to violate scriptural principles and go along with these men in doing so. And so a separation is taking place, and it's a purge, which seems, of course, unjust and not right. But we're going to analyze as we go through in the video that actually God uses this because he wants to separate people that have his approval. Now, I just wanted to insert this here because before I go to the next documentation of the further steps that they're taking in this purge of elders, it's very interesting that timed within this, now January 22, in announcements and reminders for elders. We won't take the time to read through this whole thing, but assisting young brothers to make progress, what they did was something that's really a big change here. Basically, they want to appoint very young men that qualify. They're lowering the standard, really. They want to appoint them as elders at a very young age. And so the last sentence in this first section says, although relatively young in years, exceptional ministerial servants may already be viewed as spiritually older men and qualify as elders in their mid or even early 20s. In due course, the Shepherd book will be updated to reflect this direction. So it's interesting that as they're purging out men that are willing to stand for Bible principles and for Bible trained consciences and really follow the scriptures despite losing their position, and other costs that could come into their life that could be very big, but they're willing to stand firm. And it's interesting, this mirrors what many in the world have done during this whole thing. There's different scientists and doctors and things that have spoken up and taken a stand at great cost to themselves and even to their careers. And of course, many people losing their jobs over this whole purging issue coming up secularly. But we'll touch on that some more. So anyways, I just wanted to insert this here, that it's really like they want to insert young yes men, company men, that will, above all, just follow and obey the governing body, and are quite willing to submit their Christian conscience to these men, and really violate the Bible. So they want yes men, and they're recruiting young men to replace, as they're kicking to the curb the best men that they had. They want to bring in these young yes men. So I just wanted to touch on that here. Okay, continuing on here with our documentation. This is to show that they're not backing off, and they're continuing to with their purge and really closing in on the brothers here. So here's an announcement from just this past August 10th, 2022, for hospital liaison committees. And this also covers their PVG, or patient visitation groups. So these are the HLC, these are elders that are working with hospitals over the blood issue to aid witnesses that are in situations that could be compromising with that. And then the PVG, patient visitation group, these are elders that will visit Jehovah's Witnesses, brothers and sisters in the hospital, and give them a little encouragement. So anyways, what they did here, this is something that you could pause and read at your own, but I don't want to take too long with this. But I just want to show you that the purge is continuing, because basically here they said that this is now a requirement to get the treatment, the thing, if you're going to continue in this privilege of service, as they call it, for these elders. So it says, we have decided that the HLC and PVG members will need to be fully V against the thing. And I do have to comment on this detail here, because it says medical studies have shown that individuals who are fully V have lower incidences of severe or fatal infection. Notice they don't say, because earlier it was always, oh, it'll keep you from getting it and it'll keep you from spreading it, which now that even in the mainstream news they're showing that was misinformation. And even though people earlier that were showing from their own documents that it doesn't keep people from getting it or keep you from spreading it, they were labeling that as misinformation. But anyways, and then they say this is for their safety as well as for the safety of the patients they assist. So that's going back, it's really implanting that thought that these patients might get it from you, even though you're not sick, if you don't get the thing. So it's based, it's just, you know, if people don't know by now, it's based on a whole lot of untruthful things. The bottom line here, that this is a mandate for elders, and I do know of some that had held out to this point, and then they ended up getting the thing because they didn't want to lose their privilege here. So again, more separating, more purging going on. And then it mentions that any elders that are going to be considered in the future for this assignment, it basically says don't even bother giving them serious consideration. Ask them first about their status as far as getting the thing, and then if they haven't got the thing, there's no point in giving them a thorough consideration for appointment for this privilege. So it basically nixes you out immediately. Now, this is the most recent step in the purge. I've actually seen a letter about this. But for privacy reasons, I can't post it here. But there's a comment that a wife made in social media of an elder that got an invitation. This is about in-person elder schools during 2023. They put letters out, a first initial letter out very early for the schools, just so you can make arrangements with your secular work and have, because it's a week-long school, so you need to get off from your secular employment. So this is just the initial letter they're sending out without any details. It's just a general letter. And in this initial letter and invitation, letting you know the dates of the school, which this one is in July 2023, the letter I saw. Right in this brief letter, they mention this. I'll read this portion of this comment here. The sister said, "Not sure if this has already been covered, but my husband just got his invite for the KM Elder School in July 2023. The very first requirements is that all elders attending must be VXD. There is no option for remote viewing." Yeah, they make this very clear that basically, even though they easily could put it on Zoom, they won't let you do that. If you cannot meet these requirements, the elder is to contact the service desk immediately and notify them. So she comments the squeeze is happening. So this is that purge. It's ongoing, and they're not backing off. It's tightening up. So it's getting to the point where that it's so close to saying you can't even serve as an elder, period, unless you get this thing. They're just gradually squeezing it in because they did the hospital mandate. They've done the Bethel. I can't say that word too often. The video will get flagged. The dates of man at Bethel. So you've got all special full-time servants and circuit overseers and their wives, special pioneers. So all of them are already required, period. Otherwise, you lose your privilege. And so now it's closing in on just your rank and file regular elders now, that they too are going to be required. Because now, what kind of elder are you if you won't go to your elder school for a week, where you get all the latest information on how to be a good elder? So you see, it's already, and the circuit overseers have complete authority from the governing body. It's the circuit overseers now that appoint and delete elders, so they'll get private direction from the organization and behind the scenes, and they may get direction, saying, hey, any of these elders, survey if they're not willing to get the thing, find out why. What's their attitude toward the direction that the governing body made clear in their updates what they want you to do, and it's clear from their standard for these schools. It's clear what they want you to do. So very easily the circuit overseers will be looking at these elders and removing them. But the other side of it is each one has to make up their own decision. But my thought of it is, well, it's good to be separated out and stand for righteousness and be purged out. So why would you want to keep clinging to something when you become party to sin? You share in the sins of others. You share in blood guilt. At this stage, there's incredible mounting blood guilt in this whole thing. So my thought as elders, just if you haven't stepped away by now, it's time to. But that's up to you. Last thing she says here, so if the governing body isn't sorry, isn't backing down, it wasn't a mistake. And this isn't going to get fixed. We can walk away with a clear conscience, in our opinion. So this is all part of a general spirit in the whole world that's taking place now, and it involves not just these last 2.5 years, but it keeps increasing. There's this attitude, as you see here, this culture that covers many things that are really against the Bible. If anybody's standing for Bible principles in many different areas, they're going to get purged or canceled, so to speak. And so I just wanted to just show this little picture here, just to show that this is a general thing in the entire world, and I understand it to really be a spiritual thing. And so I'm going to touch on just a few more general areas where this could be seen, and it's up to you to judge whether this be the case. Anybody paying attention will see that in the For example, in the United States, in the military, there's a purge going on. We might call it a purge as well, just like we have this elder purge. Basically, anybody that is going to stand by their Christian conscience is going to have a lot of trouble staying in this form of service, because these different issues coming up are putting the squeeze on them, the very same ones regarding the treatment, and then these other social, biblical issues as well. Now, the same things have been happening in the healthcare field. Doctors, nurses, many have had to take a stand, and I know many personally that did, and even lost their employment over the situation. But again, it's a situation to me where you're losing the best of your doctors, the best of your nurses, the best of all your people in healthcare are being purged out, and it's leaving you with people that are willing to compromise their conscience and go along with protocols and other things that aren't in the best interests of patients, but they're willing to do it for their own selfish ends, to keep their employment, or the various considerations they have in their life, in being willing to succumb to the peer pressure. But then you have others that have prayerfully stood by their Bible-trained conscience and taken a stand, and these are your best people, but they're being purged out. Some may be familiar with, there's a Bible account in the book of 2 Kings in chapter 10 where Jehu was assigned by Jehovah God to root out Baal worship out of Israel. And as he did this, there was a point at which he called a big solemn assembly of Baal worshipers. He said, if Ahab worshiped Baal a little, Jehu, now he's going to be king, right? Jehu is going to worship Baal a lot, And so, but really it's a ruse, which he's doing because he wants to do a separation as to who the real Baal worshipers are and who the real worshipers of Jehovah are, and then take action. So I just want to show you a couple of those Bible verses and an interesting point about that here. Now this is really interesting because it's like there's actually two purges going on here. Like Satan has his purge or exclusivity going on, but then Jehovah through Jehu, he turns that on its head, and then Jehovah makes his own separation and his own purge. Let me read the verses here. It's a longer account, but I'll read part of the account. 2 Kings chapter 10 here, verse 19 and 20. So summon all the prophets of Baal, all his worshippers, and all his priests to me. Do not let a single one be absent, because I have a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who is absent will not live. So under penalty of death, you need to come. If you're a Baal worshiper, you need to come, right? Jehu. But Jehu was acting with cunning to destroy the worshippers of Baal. Jehu continued, declare a solemn assembly for Baal. So they proclaimed it. Now this term solemn assembly is interesting. It was mentioned here in the March 15th, 1989 Watchtower. There was a find relating to Baal worship, and it focused on this expression, solemn assembly. Sanctify a solemn assembly for Baal. According to Vitus Testamentum, a magazine published in the Netherlands, this expression is genuine Canaanite and means a closed circle. Any outsider could be punished with a curse. So it's interesting, we talk about woke and cancel culture, and so sanctifying a solemn assembly, it's an exclusive thing, a closed circle. Only those in the club and only those that are with the narrative, with the Baal narrative, are allowed into this thing. And so Jehu, he makes this ruse, and he even goes into, he says, make sure you put on your Baal garments, and he told his men, go through this assembly and make sure there's no worshipers of Jehovah, just to make sure there's no worshipers of Jehovah present, only genuine Baal worshipers, and he gets them all in one place, and then he goes on to slaughter them. And in this way, there was the two purges going on: exclusivity, a closed circle of Satan Baal worshipers, But then Jehovah God turned it on its head and was able to make the separation of who truly was a worshiper of Jehovah. Now, Jesus had given a well-known parable about the wheat and the weeds, or the wheat and the tares. And here's a nice picture that shows before the wheat and the tares ripen, they look very similar. And so the risk would be in trying to pull the weeds out, the risk would be that you might also uproot the wheat. So you can read it in Matthew chapter 13, where Jesus explained, because the workers said, Master, should we go out and get the weeds out, And Jesus said, no, that you might also uproot the wheat. And so when the disciples came to Jesus for the interpretation of the parable, to make it clear to them, he said, at the end of the system of things, at the end of the age, when the Son of Man returns, he'll send his angels out and gather up the wheat or the tares and burn them. And he would gather out the wheat into his storehouse. And so the angels, at the end of the age, the angels would be able to clearly see who is righteous and who is not. So I just thought that was interesting, because as it's apparent we're at the end of the age and we see this great separating taking place throughout the earth. So we shouldn't really mourn, although it can be stressful, that there's a purge going on, both as we've shown here with the elders, and just a global purge or separation taking place. But this is something that was foretold. So here's a picture of the common practice of branding cattle, so they know which ownership, which ranch it belongs to. This has been a long-standing practice. It shows ownership, and so I really can't go into it here at this point in this video, but I would just recommend that one's prayerfully analyze the words of the book of Revelation, chapter 13, chapter 14. It's also touched on in other chapters, and then in chapter 19, verse 20, it mentions that those who get branded get the mark, that they're misled into it. And so I would just, at this point, prayerfully mention that this should be considered as to what the world situation, what we're really witnessing, as far as whose ownership we want to be marked as having. Now, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 9, mentions about another marking taking place. There was a man with an inkhorn that was to go through and mark those on the foreheads that had God's approval. And then these 6 ones with smashing instruments were to go through and destroy those that didn't have this mark of approval, or we might say a mark of ownership of belonging to God. I'll just read a couple verses there of Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4 through 6. It says, "Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, said the Lord," or Jehovah, "and put a mark on the foreheads of the men, sighing and groaning over all the abominations committed there." This is talking, he's not just talking in general terms about bad things, but it was specifically related to the clean worship of Jehovah, that there was spiritual abominations taking place that right-hearted people would be sighing and groaning over. Continuing, it says, "And as I listened, he said to the others, 'Follow him through the city and start killing. Do not show pity or spare anyone. Slaughter the old men, the young men, the maidens, the women and children, but do not go near anyone who has the mark. Now begin at my sanctuary.' Then he told them, 'Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth.' So they went out and began killing throughout the city." So notice that they started with the elders who were before the temple, it says. So that's interesting in view of this video primarily the focus was about this elder purge, and so the older men in Jerusalem were to get the punishment or destruction first. The thing is, Satan the devil may have his thought, but he's playing chess with the master chess player, we might say, Jehovah God. And so Jehovah God's always many moves ahead. And so, as we saw with that solemn assembly or closed circle of the Baal worshippers in Jehu's time, the purge or closed circle or the cancel culture, we might say, it served as a separation. And so Jehovah God actually used it to separate out those that love him from those that don't. And so when we're looking at this whole bigger picture of what everything that's going on, both with these purge of elders and with the spiritual condition in the world, we always have to keep in mind the bigger picture that Jehovah God is the master chess player. So my thought is, although it may feel difficult and unjust, really go ahead, purge out those that have a conscience, purge out the righteous men, that they may be separated out, and the distinction may become clear. And then it will leave left only those that, like in that solemn assembly with the Baal worshippers, it'll only leave those that are willing to compromise their consciences. I think about the governing body, and they've got what they call governing body helpers that are on their committees. And these men, I've really come to see them, I used to respect them, but now I see them as enablers. They're enabling this unscriptural course of adultery with the world to take place and really mirror exactly what's happening in the world. So, yeah, go ahead, let it all take place, that those who are true Christians may be marked in their foreheads, marked as being owned by God and his Son Christ Jesus. So Satan may have his thoughts, he may do his purge, he may try to cancel Christians out from the earth, but in the end, God wins. He brings out his own. He separates the wheat from the weeds, and it's checkmate. So lift up your heads, friends. This is the time that we've been waiting for.